사방팔방.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Korean Always podcast. And today we have a special guest with us, one that probably, let's see, if you are in any way involved in the Korean, language learning community in the past year, you might have heard of a fancy guy named Clowdy Howdy. So we'd like to introduce Clowdy Howdy to everyone. He's
Yeah,
with Howdy.
yeah.
Hello,
As always.
everybody.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you all in the digital Korean
Metaverse.
Korean learning metaverse. Yeah, good to be here. Good to be with two people who I admire for their dedication and learning ability. I don't know.
Oh yeah, we were very glad that we could finally interview Clowdy, at least as our first interview too. Because I mean, this man Clowdy, he's our number one Korean immersion learner YouTuber on the planet.
Yeah.
So we got to get him down. So if we could get started, Clowdy, if you could give us a quick introduction to yourself for those that might not know who you are.
Well, yeah. So I hope nobody takes too seriously the number one Korean immersion learner moniker. That's very tongue in cheek. But yeah, I've been learning Korean with immersion based methods for almost exactly 2 years now. I think I started about a year and 11 months ago. About at this point. But yeah, I was kind of one of the few people who were kind of forming early or not. I wasn't actually forming communities right at the start, but I was joining brand new communities of immersion learners who were studying Korean back when there wasn't very many around. There weren't any communities for it. So anyway, I started learning right at the start of that, and I've been learning ever since. And I started uploading YouTube videos to document my progress, and that turned into just me wanting to share a little bit about the daily life of learning Korean, and just kind of bring people along for the ride. And I've been more involved with the community, helping to create resources, helping beginners get started with it. And yeah, that's where I'm at. So glad to be here.
Yeah, great. I mean, you said you started about 2 years ago, which is about similar time to me and Adamola. But you didn't. So yeah, so you're helping other people out now with all these community projects and stuff. And I've seen that you're quite active in Discord and whatnot. But how did you actually get into Korean? Was there a particular motive? Because usually people have quite a strong reason, like K-pop or whatever. I'm curious to hear what your sort of start was.
Yeah, I'm jealous of people who have a strong reason to learn Korean. Actually, I wouldn't say that I ever did have I wouldn't say that I started with a strong reason. So I was playing Osu, and
oh no,
yeah,
I played that as well. So yeah,
nice. Yeah, I got really deep into it a few years ago, and I kept hearing these Korean K-pop songs.
Right,
I thought it was awesome, and so I started looking into that more and more. Eventually, started following some of the behind the scenes stuff from some of the K-pop groups.
Right.
Some of
Any
the
in particular?
Yeah, it started off with Twice and Red Velvet, and that's kind of how things got started off for me. And yeah, and that led to me finding some shows like Running Man, which is a show that I love, and Knowing Bros.
Yep.
So yeah, two classic shows. I started loving the humor of the guests on those shows, and started getting interested in the actual language. And eventually, I decided that I was either I needed to do something productive with my life other than try to rank up in Osu and Rocket League. So,
right. Okay.
So I was like, I need to put these things behind, and I'm going to do this thing that I've been kind of toying around with for about a year at that point. And yeah, I just decided to dig into it. And ever since then, I've had to continually discover new reasons to be excited about learning Korean and new things to aim for, new things to be looking forward to. And I've just kind of made a habit out of showing up every day. And
Yeah.
now the further I get along into it, now I'm starting to see the opportunities for communicating with people and access to communities that I wouldn't have had access to, just talking with people from all over the world, and of course meeting other language learners, which has been a lot of fun.
Wow, it's quite a lot to go. Yeah, because having a saying you had you're jealous of people who have quite a strong reason is, I kind of can see how, I mean, at least in my own experience, that your initial reason can sort of fade away. But
Right.
obviously, K-pop, all three of us have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, so we know what that's like for motivation.
Right.
Obviously, I think I've been talking a little bit too much, Adam, and I want to let you have a chance to ask the next question.
No,
But yeah,
of
I thought that was
course.
quite
And
good.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think so. You mentioned how you felt like your reasons have changed. Where were you started? How do you think you changed from where you started to now? What's the difference with your reasonings? How has that changed?
I think at the beginning, there was I think I was worried about being old and losing an opportunity to learn a language. I mean,
Right.
I'm now in my 30s, and learning a language is something that I thought would be cool, and never got into. And then also, all of my life I've lived getting into things, and not taking them to their limits and pushing
Yeah.
them to the extreme and getting to a high skill level at something. And I had been craving this, um, some opportunity to just take a skill to a really high level, because I've worked so many different types of jobs. I've lived in a bunch of places in the US, and uh, I've done all kinds of different work, and I've had hobbies that stretch over all kinds of different areas. And one thing that I never did with a hobby that I used to be into was music. I never took that to its logical extreme of getting to a point where I was proud about the level of craftsmanship.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of dropped that early.
Do you think?
And
Sorry. Do you
I
think?
don't.
Yeah, just to interrupt. So, do you think there's like a sort of particular reason for that, or is it just kind of natural, kind of instinct, or whatever?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it could just be. It just feels like the natural progression of my life. This
Yeah.
thing happened to be at a time where I had just begun a kind of process, or I was in the middle of a process I had started a few years earlier of resituating my intentions to build something for the future, I guess.
Mm.
I'd lived, honestly, I'd lived a lot of my 20s not really thinking too much about the future, kind of rock and roll, just living each day as it comes. And so part of that was the process of setting my sights on the peak of a really large goal and just taking it one step at a time. So that idea, Korean was just the thing that popped in place right at the time, and it was like right place, right time kind of thing.
Right. So it wasn't sort of a set path or anything. Yeah, it kind of seemed like you've been waiting, for something. Like you had this sort of craving to get
Yeah.
something done, but Korean it's just kind of, as you say, just out of nowhere sort of thing. Well, I mean, more or less,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So
And I
I get what you're
guess
saying.
when
Yeah.
you started, what was it that got you on immersion? Because we know, like, before you got to actually immersing, some of us started from like traditional methods. But when is it? What was it that got you on immersion? Who was it, or what did you discover?
Gotcha. Yeah. So when I first started, I the first thing I did was order a book from Talk to Me in Korean, their level 1 grammar book,
Yeah.
and the workbook that went with that. After I bought those, then I realized that stuff is actually available for free on their website.
Yeah. Oh, I feel
Right.
the pain too. Yeah, I've done the same.
Yeah, but I don't mind, supporting them, buying a couple of their books because I think they provide a pretty good resource for people.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started doing it every day. I was thinking, okay, I'm just gonna learn Korean. I'm gonna commit to about 4 or 5 months and see where I'm at by then, and see if I still want to keep going. And so each day I would do a little bit of Korean, and I would kind of look around the internet, YouTube and Reddit and a few other places looking for tips and tricks. And eventually I came across a Jama NYC video where he tried to learn like 1,000 Spanish words in a day or something using Anki.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
And I was like, this seems absolutely wild, but it clicked in my head that I would need a way to learn vocab. So I started, he was using Anki. And so I thought, okay, I need to focus on vocab. Yeah, that makes sense. I can't just read these talk to me in Korean things. And then I got Anki, and I was looking at videos how to do that. And I think I just started getting closer and closer to the age at MIA world.
Yeah.
And YouTube recommended me a Matt versus Japan video
Mhm.
of him talking to natives in VR chat.
Right. Yeah.
And so I heard him talk, and I was like, wow, this guy sounds like a Japanese person. Started looking at his other videos, and everything matched up so well with all of the principles that I had been trying to apply to my life of building systems rather than goals, and just
Yes.
working to build something that I can that will work for me, just from me like living it out, and just all of the ritual of showing up every day and just doing something, uh, and being able to piece things together over time through a lot of exposure. So all of that spoke to me, and uh, after I looked into it more, I read the MIA website, and I
Mhm.
made the decision that I was going to start that next weekend.
Oh
So,
wow! And then from there, you
That's
just carried
awesome.
on, haven't looked back.
yep, basically.
Yeah, well, because yes, it's interesting you mentioned about sort of systems versus goals. Because I've been reading a few books, and most self help books, like especially ones in terms of habits, often mention that idea. Was that an idea you just like found in a book somewhere, or is it kind of how did you get to that sort of realization? Because that's quite, I should say, like quite profound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really profound idea to me. The way that I came across it was, I think in 2012, if I want to say like 2012 or 2013, uh, Scott Adams, the Dilbert creator, wrote this book called "How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win," or
All
"Still
right.
Win Big" or something.
Okay. I haven't heard of
And
that. Yeah.
so yeah, it in that book. Well, and then also "The Power of Habit" by Charles Duhigg. It was written
Oh
around the
yes,
same
that's
time.
quite famous. Yeah.
And so, yeah, both of those kind of popped onto the scene at the same time. And this book, so the "How to Fail at Almost Everything" one that was the core basis of the idea, was that you create these systems, so that you win every day. You complete your task, you show up, you do go through the motions, and that's a success every single day. Versus a mindset of trying to hold uh, in your mind in the future, which doesn't exist yet. It's just this concept of continually reaching for something that you're never gonna get.
Mm,
Essentially, you
mm,
always fail. Maybe eventually you might get it, but then, anyway, the systems versus goals idea of just, like, for me, sitting down and doing my Anki reps,
yeah.
and then watching a show is or and then reading a book or something. It's all something that is, I know that every time I show up, uh, I'm increasing my chances, the likelihood of success in the future. So that's all that I'm doing now, is I'm just increasing my odds of success every time I do it. So that's like my goal, is so that I end up closer to, luck, I guess, every day.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, it's a good concept.
I mean, yeah,
you
I mean,
know,
take
yeah,
it away. Yeah,
I
you go.
yeah. So like with that idea of like setting those habits, I think we all know, all of us, we know like those habits are really important for like making sure that you stay consistent and are on this path. But like unlike George and I, we're like teenagers, we're college students, we're not working jobs, we're not doing life's business, paying for bills, working for that
Yeah.
stuff. Like what were the habits that you set in that really helped you maintain your consistency?
Yeah, no, that's it's a good question because I think it's something that that is it can feel difficult or it can feel easy depending on what situation you're in. I'm in a situation right now. I when I started doing this, I knew that I was single and I don't have a family or kids, and that I live really close to where I work, and um, and the pandemic stuff was just getting started, so things were closing down, and I knew this is going to be an opportunity to really devote a lot of time to it. So that's how I started. Uh, with the mindset of, well, I'll just devote all of my free time to this. But then that that evolved into setting up these times in the morning where I would make sure that I would do my Anki before I go to work, and then on the way to work, I would be listening to shows, um, or podcasts or whatever, YouTube. And then I actually worked in a position where I was able to listen to things at work the entire time. So all of the web dramas and dramas and stuff that I had watched, I would make an MP3 version of that and just listen to it while I was at work. Um, and then yeah, it's there are sacrifices that you can make, and it can be difficult. It would be harder for someone who has kids and a wife, or a husband, or a partner or whatever, to like make time out for them and make time for their friends and make time for other interests and everything. For me, it was kind of a singular thing. So I gave up. I was on kind of an amateur Rocket League team that played in a league, and I I decided that I didn't have enough time to play this game and show up to practices and be a part of the team, uh and commit what I would want to be able to commit to that. So I gave up doing that, and I also kind of made sure that I wasn't playing video games, and just decided to uh, put everything in my life into the context of my health and job first, and Korean second, and just kind of tried to make everything I could Korean. I sort of took a hint from the AJAT
Yeah.
playbook and just
You
tried to
read
make
that, yeah.
everything about Korean.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, reading that website is pretty, it does stuff to your mind.
Yeah.
But you're obviously quite serious about playing, like, Rocket League, turn out to a team, because obviously there's at least with video games, I'm quite into video games myself. But there's sort of two types of video game players: the people who are just doing it for fun and see it's completely recreational, and obviously people who are kind of semi-serious about it. So you're saying you're actually in like sort of a league and whatever. So was that kind of like an ambition, or was it just kind of how far did you want to take video games? Because obviously you were saying that there are other things in your life where you didn't take it as far as you wanted to, but it sounds like you had some sort of dedication to this game. So I'm just curious how far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
you
game
went with
was
that.
always 100% just hobby, but
Right.
it was actually the video game. It was both Osu and Rocket
Yeah.
League that I was trying to apply these processes and procedures and systems, to try to develop my skill in one area, and it was kind of like a dry run for doing that,
Yeah.
uh, and and I found a lot of success in improvement, and seeing that I could push myself doing something that was fun, at least that I
Yeah.
enjoyed, and so that and doing something like I was training regularly and trying to develop a systematic approach to my training. Um,
Mm.
and a little over the top for any casual gamer, but it
Yeah.
was a really fun process. And that's kind of what led to me then thinking I could actually do this for either programming or Korean. So I tried to learn programming for about 2 days, and I thought, okay, Korean it is.
Yeah, I'd agree. Programming.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
I'm in the same
program was
boat
the
with
first
that.
language you attempted to learn, huh?
Yeah,
Program.
there you
Oh,
go.
that's tough.
Public
Yeah,
reveal.
actually, yeah, that's it's an accurate way to put it.
Oh man. So I
How's
guess
yeah.
yeah.
No,
You
you
go
go.
ahead.
You
Go
go.
ahead.
No, because I'm
Okay.
talking all the time.
I was gonna ask about. So we talked a little bit about how you got into immersion, but I guess now that you've reached 2 years, what is your take on your output or your moving forward with Korean? How do you see yourself going forward?
Yeah. So for the longest time, I didn't know what I was going to be doing this for. Um,
Mm,
and so I was happy to just continue focusing on the comprehension to try out this experiment of not speaking because I didn't have it. I don't have any opportunities in real life to do it. I could always talk to people online, but I don't know anybody who's Korean in my neighborhood. And I would have to travel to different parts of town or a different city, probably, to find any larger groups of people who actually speak the language.
mm,
So the 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 further along I get with Korean, though, my comprehension, like now I feel like things are starting to kind of glue together, and I have this new excitement for the idea of communicating with people. And I would love to be able to just go and type any comment I want on a YouTube channel and leave a funny comment, or go to or message somebody and make friends online from people in Korean communities.
yeah.
So yeah, I've recently decided that I was going to start practicing speaking and writing
Mm,
and all of those things. It's kind of rough
yeah.
to go from not doing anything at all for 2 years to now I have to figure out what's what. I have to make the decision. What does this mean? How do I say this? And
Yeah.
so it's a bit of an odd experience, but it's fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think out of the three of us, I'm the only one who's sort of been kind of, I guess you could say, early outputting. Because for when I spoke to Adam Mola as well, he kind of said, like, from a similar perspective to you, when after hearing, Asia and the refold stuff, that you kind of took it as like output is like the devil, like, as in, like, yeah, from what I've heard, is like you cannot
Yeah.
be outputting. Like, it's very serious that you don't output, and like you don't even try and like leave comments and text and stuff. Whereas I was leaving comments even when like I was terrible.
Yeah.
So I've never really been sort of scared to. Well, I guess it's not fear. You kind of, it's kind of like perfectionism, isn't it? I guess. But yeah, that is quite. Yeah, I think there's kind of like a different. I say I've got a different impression from what I'd sort of absorbed with the whole like
Mhm.
outputting thing, and it's quite. I feel like there's kind of a split in the community of people who are like early outputters versus actually outputting is not really that big of a deal kind of thing. So yeah, that was quite. I guess I could say unexpected.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the way I see the way I see output now,
Mm,
early output, is the idea of just using delay of output as a risk management strategy.
yeah.
And the idea being the more you wait to output, the lower risk of starting with really, really bad habits. But honestly, the more I learn and the more I focus on only input, the more open I am to the idea of earlier output,
Yeah.
with the condition being that I don't think it's a lack of, I don't think it's early output that is the issue, but it's a lack of immersion and input and things that gets people into
Right.
trouble when they focus on chewing over the beginner grammar exercises in their lesson 1, 2, and 3, and then they just repeat them
Yeah.
and look up words and try to literally translate everything in their own language over, and that's all they do.
Yeah, that's not good.
That's where you run into creating bad habits, especially if you're not even sure what you're saying. You're just trying it. You're
Yeah,
saying it out to your friend who also doesn't know Korean.
certainly
And
agree.
yeah, so I think I think looking back, I would have, if I would have started around 9 months into my journey, I would have been totally fine.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. I
6 months
think
or whatever.
it's once it kind of starts to feel somewhat natural, you know what you're saying, and you can kind of see. Perhaps you might be able to even see where you go wrong on some level. That I think, yeah, as you say, that's quite a good time. But
Yeah,
yeah, the opinion on that
I'd
varies
even
quite a
agree
lot.
with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. And I guess something that I think a lot of people are curious about is how would you say approaching grammar is the way to go with immersion? Because a lot of people go really hard on grammar and then they think that I need to keep studying all the way to the highest level of grammar, that kind of mindset. What was the mindset you had into grammar?
Yeah, so I don't know if I had the right mindset or not, and I try to pay attention to how other people do it so I can kind of get a sense of other people's approaches. But how I did it was reading a grammar resource from start to finish and giving, and then waiting a month, and then grabbing another one and reading it start to finish, and then waiting a couple of months while meanwhile continuing to immerse and try to read and stuff. I think what I liked about that was covering so much ground. You get like exposure to everything. You get a little bit. You become aware of all of these different parts. You start to see the larger patterns of the language, and then by the time you've read through a couple of these guides, you know where to look to find the little piece that you don't understand, and you can pick apart a sentence. And so I don't know. I think that's a solid way to do that. And then at that point, anybody else's guess is as good as mine, I guess. But it seems like then spending a little more time to refine your understanding on stuff you see all the time, or stuff you want to understand all the time. That seems like the way to go. But that's kind of what I'm in the process of doing, is making sure that I understand all the small little grammar points that I could safely ignore for 2 years because I didn't have to speak accurately or write accurately.
Yeah, because you obviously you're making content now for like beginner learners and stuff. So I suppose, yeah, grammar might be something that you want to have a decent grasp of if you're going to teach other people and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and actually, I don't actually have any intentions of making teaching materials or
All
being a
right.
teacher, or I don't even really want to help people learn Korean. Like, it's actually, I did make a video.
Oh, exposed.
It's all about the money.
I did make a video early on, like how to learn Korean with MIA, which was basically just me reading the MIA website and going, okay, so there's a lot of people in the community asking, how do I use the MIA website to learn? And I just kind of made it like, okay, well, this is what's on there, and these are some ideas for how to do it with Korean. And other than that, I think I have been worked on some stuff behind the scenes, like making the refold. Like I helped make a refold starter deck, but I don't actually want to teach anybody. I don't. So.
Just making sort of the
It's all right.
process, like
It's all right. It's all right.
the how do you say, like like the entry process a lot easier
Helping
for the
people get
learners.
into immersion.
Yeah.
Making it
I
easier
like.
for people.
Yeah, I like helping communicate other people's plans, like in different words, or helping somebody like find somebody else's resources. But I don't want to be like, I'm not going to be the next Go Billy. I'm not going to be the next Talk to Me Korean.
You're not going to be selling any courses anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly.
No courses. All right.
Did you want? Okay. So we did have another bit, and because we like on the podcast, we like to go into some topics where there's sort of mixed opinions. So next
Cool.
next hot topic is Hanja. Obviously, we made an episode about that recently, but do you have any thoughts about when you should learn Hanja, if you should even learn it at all? Have you learned it yourself? All this kind of stuff. What is your take on Hanja, please?
Yeah, so I've seen other people like I read something Retro said one time on a comment that he said that he doesn't think that it's necessary for people to get too much into Hanja early on, because you'll start to see it where it's not, and you'll be misled into thinking that there's all kinds of Hanja or different Hanja where there should be. And so
you need a better foundation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see that being the case, exactly. And so now I'm at the point where most of my learning is trying to figure out specific grammar nuances and vocab,
Okay.
essentially.
So
Like,
you don't bother at all with Hanzo itself.
well, so
Yeah.
I feel like now I actually can have some benefit in looking into that.
Right.
I probably could have had plenty of benefit maybe a year ago, but I just never got into a workflow
Yeah.
that worked well. But now I'm using the Migaku extension and some pop-up dictionaries
Oh
to
yeah.
quickly look up the Hanja for a lot of
Right.
things. And just in the last few days, actually, I'm really enjoying digging into that and
Right.
making all these connections with other words I know. And I feel like it's really helping me now. So
Yeah, no, because I don't know if you've how much like actual like reading you've done and stuff, but we talked about this in our sort of whole Hanjo episode, but just to give like a sort of basic thing, like if you know, my personal opinion is that if you know around maybe say the first even like 200 to 500, I've only learned about 500 plus myself, but I think once you know about 200, you can really get a kind of like a grasp on the vocab in a kind of different way. It just people say it's like Latin. It's kind of like the
yeah,
roots become
The
stronger,
roots, the
and
origins, how
I
they
couldn't
connect to
recommend it
other
enough.
words.
But yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
that was no. I just want to hear your opinion on that because everyone's got a different opinion.
yeah. And when you
Yeah,
and when you say that you're that you think knowing about 200 or so, do you
yeah,
mean knowing the Chinese characters, or do you mean like knowing like
like the
Noon
meaning
Mok,
and stuff.
like the name of
Right?
it,
Yeah.
right? Like
No,
you see
I
Mok, and
mean
it's like
knowing
that it has
everything.
to do with eyes or looking or something.
Right, right. No, I'm talking about when I say know the characters. I personally like to actually know the pitch, the character itself, and the meaning as well. Just because I feel like memorizing just the text on its own can get quite messy. Because at least with the picture, I call it a picture. It's a symbol, whatever you want to call it, character, I suppose.
Yeah,
But you have some sort of like mental association with like an image of what that might be, and I feel like it just helps you memorize it overall. So yes, there's no real need to actually know them, but in I just think it helps with memorization overall, personally.
yeah.
Because they're all like there's so many similar ones, right? Like there's like a million ones for gu, su, whatever. So yeah, it helps with your mind.
I
Like organization.
Yeah, so I did actually do about 450 or so
Oh wow.
cards from RTK.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Just a recognition RTK,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think that was useful as a kind of ground rule. Obviously, it's not directly tied exactly to Hanja, but it's all of the readings or at least all of the kind of keyword associations with those are basically the same.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Between Korean and Japanese for the Hanja. So yeah, I think that did kind of help because now I can look at them when I'm looking them up in the dictionary, and it makes more sense. I can if the text
Yeah.
font is large enough for me to like not squint at it and actually see it,
Mm.
I could kind of pick out the little parts of it. So that did seem
Mm.
to
Now
help.
you mentioned you did RTK. It sounds like you might have had some Japanese fever in the Korean
I mean,
studying there. Did
also
you?
has some Japanese in it as well, so I can only
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah, I did dabble with Japanese a little bit, and the RTK thing, I thought it might help me with getting used to the Hanja and the
Yeah.
Chinese characters. But then the side benefit of that would be that I'd be ready to learn some Japanese. So
Oh, okay.
that's what I thought. I tried doing it for a little while with my niece, but she ended up getting busy with school. And when she dropped it, I dropped it because doing a job and two languages and then other
Yeah,
interests, it's just
that's
not happening.
yeah. I mean, I've tried a bit of Japanese in the past. This is before I even learned Korean, so I can relate to a bit of that. But it seems like Adam is the only one here without the the other language fever, unless you're hiding it.
No, you see, I had a little bit, but you see, the reason why I got in on Hanja was because of I was like, oh, Chinese is kind of cool, and then I just started watching more videos that had Chinese, but it was in Korean, and I was like, you know what? If I knew the characters, I'd probably be a little closer to Chinese. So then I started studying a little bit more Hanja. That's what I got into that, but.
Uh,
I'm still 100% Korea right now. Korea right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Right on.
Yeah, no one's attacking you. It's okay.
Don't kill me. It's okay. All right.
No, but
Yeah.
so with that, then, would you ever consider learning another language in the future? Is that a thing?
Yeah, from right now, I think it depends on a few things. If I was in a position with my routine daily life where I could reach a quite a comfortable level with Korean first, and then had the opportunity to also spend a bunch of time learning another language, I probably will try learning Japanese for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I've I'm not gonna dabble anymore.
Yeah.
At least not for another year or so. So yeah, I'm gonna be all in on Korean for the time being, but I still might learn Japanese one day.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty much similar opinion with me actually. But
Korean always for
Korean
now.
always, yeah,
Yeah, Korean
yeah.
always.
We're all on the
Exactly.
same
Korean
page.
always. So yeah.
Amen.
Amen. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Oh man. But also, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on what do you think a person just now jumping in, like, okay, what's immersion? And they discovered immersion is this, and they want to get it on Korean. What is the first recommendation you'd have for that individual?
Yeah. So, that's probably like I would say that's the one area of advice where I actually feel uh, competent in giving. Because I feel like ever since I started, I've always helped like beginners like kind of find things to start with. But I I really like the recommendations to try to find a solid vocabulary deck to just start learning vocabulary and to just read a lot of grammar and make sure that you are reading the Hangul and you're not reading the romanization,
Yeah.
and that you just get in the habit of doing it every day. And then I do like sentence mining, after you get done with the vocabulary deck. But yeah, just finding whatever to watch and to read, and try to find some stuff that's a little bit easier the best you can, and to not give up for if you find something that's hard, stop it, go to something else, and keep going until you find something that's a little bit easier.
Mm.
I think I made the mistake a lot of times of like I stopped trying to find webtoons after
Yeah.
looking at 3 or 4 of them because I thought, this one is easy, but the font sucks. This one is hard, but the art's cool. And I didn't find a one that was a right fit for me.
And
So
it's
so yeah, and I think I think any of the just immerse a lot, watch web dramas, and learn some vocab and learn some grammar and just keep going.
What are your thoughts on the topic, and do you think you'd take it?
I don't have any plans. The idea of going and taking a test for fun is never crossed my mind, and I think eventually, if I ever was confident that I could easily pass it, and I knew that it would help me with a specific goal or a specific advantage, if I was trying to land go to Korea or land a position or somewhere, I would consider taking it then, and I would probably prepare to make sure that I would pass it. But yeah, as of right now, I don't have any reason to take the topic. I don't think I like focusing on learning the words and the grammar in the content that I'm reading and watching. And that's enough for me to keep going right now. So, yeah, maybe in the future if I need it, but it's not on my radar.
That's a true age app mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you guys can find me Clowdy Howdy on YouTube, and I have a Twitter account. I try to update a little bit about what I'm up to on Twitter on the more day-to-day side. And on YouTube, I've made a lot of update videos so far, and I've also made a couple of other fun videos. And this year, I'm actually planning on more making the fun stuff and laid back, content that should be pretty fun. So we can also look forward to a video with Adamola pretty soon that I'm in the middle of editing. It may be out by the time this goes out, maybe not. Depends on how fast I am. And then also you'll find me in a lot of Discords that, various language learning Discords, especially the immersion ones. But yeah,
that brings us to the conclusion. We first want to say thank you, Clowdy, for coming on. And look at my camera disappear at this moment. Thank you, Clowdy, for coming on. George,
thank you guys so much. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
You've had like a lot more sort of like wisdom than I expected. So yeah, it was a really good conversation.
Cool. We're back.
But yeah, overall, thanks for being our first guest, and I suppose we'll end it here. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.